Welcome to the Capital News. I am your host, Alex Kreitis. Today is July 23rd, 2019. Thank you so much for joining me. So the title of today's episode is Draining the Swamp. Is it actually taking place? We are well within Donald Trump's presidency. We are going to be catching full stride here within the next few months already of the 2020 presidential campaign. Once we get a few more of these debates under our belt, we're going to lose those candidates on the periphery. We're going to hone into our core group of candidates on the Democratic ticket, and it is going to be full swing. Now, November of next year is an eternity away, especially in today's environment, but that's where we are. We're already more than halfway through 2019, if you can believe it already, and there's a lot we have to get to today. There's a lot we're going to have to get through for the remainder of this campaign season and everything else in between, whether it's on the economic front, whether it's on the geopolitical front, here domestically in the United States. It's all over. It's all over. We got to pay attention to everything. These are moving pieces. It's very dynamic, and we got to connect the dots. Got to take a deep breath every once in a while. Stop, think. What's going on? Is this a coincidence? Do we believe in coincidences? But getting back to the main point of today's discussion, the president's mandate, when he was elected, and all presidents have a mandate, was coming in to drain the swamp. It was coming in to shake up the system. It was coming in to say the old guard has to go, there's a new sheriff in town. Now, that's typically par for the course a lot of times when you have a new president. It's always out with the old, in with the new. And unfortunately, what typically happens is it's the new boss, same as the old boss. And I called this out in my letter to the president. If you haven't had the time to check that out, please do so on thecapitalnews.com. You can take the time to read it or find my previous podcast where I took the time to read aloud the letter to the president, and I call this out. Is this the case of the new boss, same as the old boss? Because the other thing that I talk about here all the time is people being siloed, being pushed into their corners, their respective sides. If you're a Democrat and you vote for President Obama, he can do no wrong. If you're a Republican or you're a Trump guy, he can do no wrong. That's not me. If you follow this podcast, you know that's not me. That's not the Capital News. That's not how we do business here. If something is deserving of applause, in my opinion, in my analysis, I do so. If something is deserving of criticism, I do so. That's, in my opinion, how it should be done. You shouldn't just give a blank check and a blind pass to your guy just because you voted for him. That's not how it's supposed to work in this country. We're supposed to be vigilant. We are supposed to hold our elected officials, and I use the word leaders loosely, okay? We're supposed to hold them accountable. Just giving them a blank check does not hold them accountable. And that's pretty much what just happened here again in the United States of America in the 21st century. There is no bipartisan support on nearly anything under the sun, except, wait for it, we have to increase the debt ceiling. We have to continue to borrow money to pay for programs we can't afford. That's what our process has come to. That's what these two parties can agree to. Increasing our national debt. Fantastic, isn't it? It's disgusting, is what it is. It's a shame. These people should be embarrassed, but to have embarrassment, to feel embarrassment, you have to have a brain, and I don't think most of these people have a brain. Most of them definitely don't have any type of conscience. And that's a true shame in and of itself. Can't get together on immigration reform, can't get together on infrastructure. Of all things, they can't get together on infrastructure because there was name-calling and finger-pointing. Nancy Pelosi has to open her mouth, and Donald Trump has to open his back and forth. So now there's no infrastructure taking place. The USMCA, is that going to be the trade deal between the United States, Canada, and Mexico, NAFTA 2.0? Is that going to get through? Because these guys, they go on vacation here in a few days, and they're gone for 6 weeks. Hallelujah. Not like they're doing much there anyway. But what's going to get done? What's going to get done as we make our way through this next political season, the 2020 presidential campaign? What has Donald Trump done to date? If you watch Fox News, they'll throw a litany of things that the president has gotten done. I mean, you could do that for any administration. They're always doing things. The question is it true to the message and the mandate in which the man was elected? I have some serious questions about that. Now, if you're going to actually go to Washington, D.C. and drain the swamp, you are going to be up against a huge machine. These people, these powerful institutions are not just going to lie down and say, okay, well, the American people elected you. I guess, okay, we're done. Game's over. That's not how it's going to work. Ladies and gentlemen, our federal government spends $4 trillion a year and counting. That's a lot of money. That's a ton of money. It's extremely difficult to even wrap our minds around numbers that big. Only a decade ago, in the midst of the financial crisis, we were throwing around hundreds of billions of dollars, and people were like, my goodness, those are big numbers. And then the word trillion starts to trickle in. Now today, everything is in the hundreds of billions or trillions, and nobody bats an eye. It's no problem whatsoever. This is exactly the problem. We are in the world of exponential. The hockey stick graph that you always see, it just comes out of nowhere and straight to the moon. That's not how our minds think. We like to think linearly. We like to think in a nice, steady pattern. It's very difficult to predict this type of hockey stick graph, this exponential growth. That's the world in which we live. That's why it goes from billions to hundreds of billions to boom, trillions. That's why our national debt is out of control. And lo and behold, Congress gets together not to fix infrastructure, not to have immigration reform, not to really have a better system of taxing and regulation, not to really have better negotiations with trade partners, not to have better negotiations for war and peace, hopefully on the peace side, and a whole host of things that Congress should actually be involved with. And the president. They don't do anything. But, lo and behold, even though we're in the midst, supposedly, according to the President of the United States and his administration, of the greatest economy in the U.S. history, we're running out of money. How can that be? These two things don't jive. So is the president draining the swamp? Cut taxes. I'm all for cutting taxes, but did he cut spending? No, he didn't cut spending. And in fact, now with this, we're going to kick the debt ceiling out past July of 2021, I believe. So they're kicking this down the road. And what was the compromise? What was the great compromise? Was it Democrats, okay, we're going to cut back on domestic spending, and in return, Republicans, you're going to have to cut back on foreign spending and military spending? Is that how they got together and made a tough compromise? Because we're just continuing to use a blank check. We're just running Uncle Sam's credit card to the extremes, to the max. No, they didn't do that. Why would they do that? Why would they cut spending as their form of compromise on both sides to try to get the fiscal house in order? No. They both increased spending on the military and on domestic projects. Whatever both of these things mean, I have no idea. How much more money are we supposed to give to the military, to the Defense Department? They have been given $700 billion plus a year for the past 3 years. I mean, you can look it up, folks. I can't remember the statistics off the top of my head. We talked about this in our book, The Cynic's Guide to Investing. Of course, that was published a few years ago, but nevertheless, it still remains true that the United States spends more than the next 6, 7, or 8 countries combined. And if you look at that list, most of those countries are our friends and allies. So who are we going to war with? Who are we preparing to fight? What is going on here? You don't spend this kind of money unless you're preparing for something. I mean, you can always have the argument, yeah, you want to build a military that's so strong that nobody dares threaten it. How much stronger does it have to be? You can push a button. You really want to destroy something. I mean, where's all the money going? Where's all the accountability? Because candidate Trump and even President Trump is saying, the military before he came into power was being depleted. It was depleted. It was in shambles until Donald Trump got in there and started spending even more money. So my question is, if that's true, why isn't the Obama administration under investigation? Or are they? Why isn't President Obama under investigation? Why isn't the Department of Defense under the leadership of those respective secretaries of defense, why aren't they under investigation? because that was trillions of dollars over the course of an 8-year span of the Obama administration. Where's all that money then? If what Donald Trump is saying is true, that the military was completely gutted, it was depleted. Likewise, over the course of 3 years now, with Donald Trump in office, another $2+ trillion has been spent. Where has all of it gone? For what cause? These are serious questions. If you understand what the swamp truly is, it is a combination of the military-industrial complex with the banking system. That's what it is, folks. Well, if you're spending $2.1, $2.2 trillion over the course of 3 years, I got to tell you something. The military-industrial complex is doing just fine. Absolutely just fine. And if you look at the markets today, you had Lockheed Martin, one of the biggest companies in the military-industrial complex, defense contractors, awarded billions and billions of dollars by Uncle Sam, beat expectations today on the stock market with their earnings report today. Is this any surprise? They have a record backlog. A record backlog. Well, gee, I wonder why. Uncle Sam's priming the presses. He's spending $2.1 trillion over 3 years. For what? Are we going to war? With who? We can't afford it. We have domestic issues that need to be tended to, and we just want to continue to fund this war machine. That's where this money's going, folks. You happy with that? And then the Democrats say, well, we're upping domestic spending. Well, on what? The welfare state that's unsustainable? The infrastructure projects that aren't shovel-ready and nobody's doing anything about them? What domestic projects are they talking about? There is no compromise. Where are the fiscal conservatives? Where's the Tea Party? Where are these people at? Seriously. Donald Trump is a Republican. He won. He ran on the Republican ticket. He won as a Republican. Republicans are supposed to be fiscally conservative. Of course, unless they're guys in power. You do not have, ladies and gentlemen, a national debt of $23 trillion and counting, or almost $23 trillion, excuse me, and counting. It soon will be. Don't worry about it. Without both sides lying to you. So when are you, the American people, going to wake up and say enough's enough of this two-party system and just call it as you see it? If it's a strike, it's a strike. If it's a ball, it's a ball. Doesn't matter if your guy's up to bat or if your guy's pitching. Call it like you see it. Call it as it is, not as you want to see it, not as you hope it to be. Because that's why we have the problems that we have. Hold these people to account. They are betting. They are hoping that you just let them pass because they have a D after their name or they have an R after their name. Well, I'm Donald Trump. I'm a Republican. I have the keys to the kingdom, and I'm going to spend all this money however I want, and people are just going to line up behind me because I'm charismatic and I'm their guy. Same thing could have been said several years ago under the Obama administration, and before that, and before him, and before him. This did not happen overnight. It's called divide and conquer. They've been doing it for quite a while now. I'm sure you've heard of it. It works like a gem. And we continue to fall for it. People have to wake up. You have to pay attention. Is the president draining the swamp? Yes, okay, he cut taxes. Did he cut spending? No, not even close. So you cut my taxes today only to have to increase them later down the line so we can pay for all this crap that nobody wants and can't afford. Why didn't he cut spending? Well, maybe it was difficult for that to happen in Congress. Such a shame, especially early on because you had the Republicans in charge of both chambers. But did we do that? No. We increased spending. And why is that? Because the president, in part, has taken responsibility and ownership of the economy. And if you understand GDP figures and how they're calculated, well, you have to take into consideration government spending. And if you cut government spending in the midst of everything else that's slowing down, capital expenditures, investments, consumption, even though we're told that the consumer is strong, that's bankers telling you that, which means they're using their credit cards, paying minimum monthly payments, and being charged 20-25% interest. Of course, a banker's going to say that the consumer's strong. They love being paid 25% interest. Loan sharks love being paid 25% interest. So where's it going to end? Is this draining the swamp? This has an effect on GDP. So Donald Trump wasn't going to say, all right, well, yeah, let's cut spending too. because his precious GDP figure would have taken a big hit. And we can't have that, although we're likely to probably see a nice ding in the GDP figure, which is going to come out, I believe, this Friday, the first estimate. So there's a lot to pay attention to. But are we draining the swamp? The military-industrial complex is alive and well, making record profits. The banking sector continues to be alive and well, making record revenues and or record profits, depending on the institution. Isn't that the swamp? They're doing fantastically well. We're saber-rattling all over the world. Venezuela, although we don't hear much from Venezuela anymore, I guess that was a failed attempt. Not even covertly. That was overt. That was in your face. That was on the nightly news for a long time. Who got bored with it? Did John Bolton get bored with it? Did Donald Trump get bored with it? I have no idea. But we tried to stage a coup. Evidently didn't happen. Saber-rattling with Iran. What's going on there? Is this draining the swamp? I don't know. It doesn't seem like it to me. Again, the president is up against a mountain. Most definitely. But that's what he ran against. That's what got him elected, in large part. Level with the American people. Tell us what's going on. Because the other thing we're going to have to deal with tomorrow is Special Prosecutor Bob Mueller testifying before Congress. And what a show that's going to be. The circus is going to be front and center before these people go on vacation. It's going to be on all the mainstream media channels because they are salivating. They are chomping at the bit, just waiting for some bombshell news to come out of this testimony. Now, Special Prosecutor Bob Mueller said in his prepared remarks, I think already back in May, that the report stands on its own. I am not going to add to it. I am simply standing by this, and that's it. I am not testifying before Congress. So long. See you later. Now, of course, he's testifying before Congress. The Department of Justice is saying, look, Mr. Mueller, stay within the report like you said you were going to. We're going to find out what happens tomorrow. It's a circus. If you're a Democrat, you're going to love this because you think there's going to be an aha moment, a gotcha moment. You're done, Mr. President. And if you're a Republican, you're probably going to go back and say, all right, well, what was the real meddling? Were the Russians really involved? What about Hillary Clinton? What about her? What about the Steele dossier? What about Fusion GPS? What about the DNC server hack? What happened about all this stuff? So there's going to be a whole bunch of entertainment for both sides. Both sides are going to have their field day with this. But one of the key questions that is going to come up, it might even be question number one, is Special Prosecutor Mueller. If it was not President Donald Trump, if it was John Q. Public instead, would you have recommended charges against John Q. Public? That's going to be question number one or very close to it. And it'll be interesting to see how Bob Mueller answers that question. If it'll be a non-answer or if he'll answer it directly. Because he stated several times during his announcement to the press, to the media, to the nation, back in May, that given the precedent that exists within the Department of Justice, because it's the Department of Justice's ruling, basically, that states that a sitting president cannot be prosecuted, cannot be indicted. So they knew, being Bob Mueller in his office, knew right from the get-go that they were not going to bring charges. That's according to his statement. However, they did not exonerate him. And Attorney General Bill Barr said as much as well, that this report was not an exoneration. So that leaves wiggle room, that leaves an avenue for Congress to take this by the horns, and the Democrats are going to do so, and they have been. Again, referring back to Attorney General Bill Barr's testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee a couple months ago, in regards to this report, when he testified on it, he said, look, we are going to be in the midst of an election. I, Attorney General Bill Barr, am not going to prosecute the President of the United States. The American people can read the report, they can make their decision, and if they don't like Donald Trump or they believe he is guilty of a crime, they can vote him out of office, they can vote a Democrat in or somebody else in. Fair enough statement. We have to live with that. So that's where we are. But are we draining the swamp? Because I want to know where my fiscal conservatives are. $23 trillion in debt, near $1 trillion, if not $1 trillion deficits and counting per year, and they will only get worse, especially if the economy falters. And you even had the Trump tweet that I read to you guys yesterday, not acknowledging that the economy is slowing down, but mentioning it in his tweet, saying if the economy should turn down. And of course, he was attacking the Federal Reserve on that. But nevertheless, you've never heard him talk about the economy weakening like that. If it turns down in the future. No. This is the best. The best. It's the best economy ever. So ask yourself, are we draining the swamp? Where are my fiscal conservatives? Do they even exist anymore? Or is it your guy and you're just lining up and putting party ahead of principle and ahead of country? The S&P gained 20 points today. The Dow gained 177. The NASDAQ gained 47. And the Russell 2000, the small cap index, gained 10 points, all representing about a gain of 0.6%. The Dow Jones Transports gained 0.7%. And the New York Stock Exchange gained 0.9%. Reason for the sizable gains today? You guessed it. U.S.-China trade talks are set to resume. Wow, what a shocker, ladies and gentlemen. We've only been jerked around for over a year on this. Now it's back in the fold. And the markets happen to be checking them periodically throughout the day. And obviously, you hit the refresh button and boom, all the stocks are rallying and you're looking, what happened? What took place? Why did it just shoot up like that? Well, news came out that our trade delegation is set to travel to China starting next week. This is like the biggest joke one could perpetrate on the American people right now with this. I mean, this is unbelievable. This is going to be one of the, how should I put this? This is going to be like rope-a-dope. Remember rope-a-dope, Muhammad Ali? Lean up against the rope, let the other guy just, hit him. Ali would take the punches, and then once the guy got tired, Ali would, knock him out. That to me is pretty much the game that China is playing with us, the United States of America, right now. There was a deadline during the first negotiations, right? March. There's a deadline. You got 90 days to come up with a deal. Nothing happened. There was escalation. Now this time there's a trade truce. We cave in on a supposed national security threat. We're going to continue to sell to Huawei Technologies. The Chinese are saying, well, we never promised to buy more U.S. agricultural products. And there's no deadline this time. So now everybody is just fine waiting and taking their good old time. So President Xi and China Inc. are just going to rope-a-dope the United States of America. Come on. Well, you can come over here. You can fly over here. You're free to fly over to China. Come on. We'll put you up. We'll put you up in a nice hotel. We'll have some fancy dinners, some entertainment, whatever you want. And we'll talk about a whole bunch of things. But we're just probably not going to sign a deal. That's my analysis of this right now. The further along we get in the political process here in the United States, why would China say, okay, we're going to give President Trump a win? Unless President Xi really does like Donald Trump and really thinks that there can be a win-win solution. But if Donald Trump, if we're going to listen to the president and believe the president, that whatever deal is struck has to be better for the United States than it is for China, why would President Xi sign that deal? If we're going to believe this White House, this president and his trade delegation, in saying that we have been getting ripped off by China for years, why would China all of a sudden say, we're done ripping you off? If in fact that's true. There's another thing, real quick side note here, because there was some other news I saw out today regarding the relationship between Pakistan and India, which is always quite contentious. They are still in dispute over the territory of Kashmir. And I believe the Prime Minister of Pakistan was in the White House today, and President Trump made a statement saying, I was asked by the Prime Minister of India to potentially be a mediator between the two countries. That being, of course, Pakistan and India, which India came out and said that's not true. The Prime Minister of India never said that to Donald Trump. So here we go again, ladies and gentlemen, calling into question the credibility of a sitting president of the United States. Is this going to be the same thing taking place here with the U.S.-China trade talks that we have been warning against and cautioning against for several months now? The credibility of the President of the United States is of the utmost importance. If the rest of the world is going to start believing communist nations, socialist nations, dictators, tyrants, we're in a lot of trouble. We are in a lot of trouble. So who do we believe on this one? Did the president, was he actually told that by Prime Minister Modi of India? Or is India lying? Because they both can't be telling the truth. Very interesting, isn't it? Very interesting. Things to pay attention to. That's not draining the swamp either. This ain't small potatoes either, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, everything might work out just fine in the end. That's quite possible. But you're talking about two very populous nations. Over 1 billion people. There's over 1 billion people in India alone. Pakistan is a populous nation in and of itself. And both of these countries, by the way, have nuclear weapons. But I digress. So now we are back on this bandwagon of U.S.-China trade talks, which also propelled oil up a little bit today. We have WTI trading at $56.90 a barrel. Brent, the international benchmark, is trading at $64 a barrel, so slightly up from yesterday. Gold is at $1,421 an ounce. Silver is trading at $16.49 an ounce. Uncle Sam's 10-year Treasury inched up a little bit today and is now yielding 2.074%. And the VIX, the volatility index, shed 7% on this news and is now trading at $12.61. Across the pond, as we stated yesterday, Boris Johnson, the former mayor of London, is now the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. He is promising to unite the country and is promising to do so by delivering Brexit. All I can say is we'll see. We've been told this before. Halloween is the deadline. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. So what else do we have? Do I want to wrap up? Presidential nominee. I have not seen the article. I'm going to have to find it. I don't have to read it. I didn't have time today. But I heard a couple other people talking about it briefly. I guess Elizabeth Warren, Senator Elizabeth Warren, better known as Pocahontas in some circles, wrote an editorial in regards to her forecasting the U.S. economy. And from the sources that I've heard, it was actually a pretty well-written article talking about a lot of the things that we talk about here on a daily basis. Now, of course, again, her solutions to these problems are horrendous. They will not work. But again, you have to give credit where credit is due, and her ability to identify problems is commendable. To root cause them is commendable. Solutions, however, are terrible. So 50% of the equation is good, but it ain't good enough. So I'm going to have to do a little bit more digging into that, but it's Elizabeth Warren's editorial forecasting the economy, that it was slowing down. I think she was giving herself credit for predicting the great financial crisis. We'd have to check the tapes on that one. I'm sure maybe she caught wind or was listening to some voices out there, but I don't think this woman is any type of economic genius, far from it. So, getting back, as I summarize here today's podcast, a serious question. Is Donald Trump and his administration, are they draining the swamp? Where are my fiscal conservatives? Do you even exist anymore? Or are you just on paper? $1 trillion deficits. The president himself applauding this deal because it's a deal, so of course the president wants to applaud it. But what did it do? It increased our national debt. How are we going to pay for it? Higher taxes? Higher inflation? More money printing? Combination of both? More money out of your pocket directly through taxation? More money out of your pocket indirectly through inflation? Decreasing the value of your purchasing power? Is this what you want? Is this free market capitalism? Is this draining the swamp? Thank you so much for joining me today, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a pleasure having you as always. Please like, share, subscribe, get the word out, and leave your comments, especially on this one, because I want to know if we're draining the swamp, and I want to know where my fiscal conservatives are, if they even exist anymore. This is the Capital News. I am Alex Koritis. Godspeed.